Hey, I'm back after a long absence, and I decided on doing a few different videos, and eventually I came up with this one here in answer to a question that was asked on Quora, though these kind of questions are asked a lot by learners of English. And so the question was, can we use the word having in the English language for possession? So the short answer is yes, why not? What can we or cannot we say, provided we're indeed understanding what the person is saying? Since it's a valid question, I decided to give it a longer answer, and so I will elaborate. Besides, I generally sympathize with learners who may rightly question misleading instruction about the English language, and I admire their patience as they strive for the truth about English. First of all, the real question should be, when does have, with or without affixing ing, actually represent possession? Second, we need to understand that have is mostly used figuratively. That is to say, 97% of the time, and I'm not being literal there, have should not merely evoke possession or belonging. Put another way, what use have we for the term possessive, else it denote ownership or belonging? I'll explain, but before I do, I'd like you to consider the following. I urge you all to renounce and unlearn the conventional grammar terminology and Latin approaches to English analyses, those being taught in the mainstream schools and publishers of course books, textbooks. English has suffered enough abuse under the restrictive and the prescriptive. Now, the good news is that we can redefine, maybe, but not label, have. And I have already videos about the word have. For starts, let's look at have again and ing separately. The suffix ing serves one function in all cases, which is to put the focus or to give weight to the verb on which it is affixed. It's that simple. Have boils down to 1, the existential, with a focus on status more than action. 2, the experiential, whether it is to undergo, meet with, come across, run into, be faced with, survive, suffer from, be afflicted or affected by, or infected with. And 3, the normative, when followed by 2. So, if you will hang on to labels, if you still want to hang on to labels, it would be better to go with normative or indicative, but not present, existential, but not perfect, plus event, and not past participle. Since actually you could call it a resultative adjective. But again, let's do away with terminology for the time being. Finally, there's the experiential, usually the personal, opinionated, and that will depend on context. So consider I am having a hard time getting across to my fellow teachers that English, being the flexible and idiosyncratic language that it is, cannot be taught as if it were a Latinate language. I think we can agree have does not express possessiveness nor belonging in most cases. Oh, let's just put that there, in most cases. I purport, frankly, I'm saddened that teachers of English quite simply avoid actually conveying English as it is, and instead feel that they are having to appropriate and parrot that what has been fed to them, or that which, right? I made a note here. There are too many witches in the business of English language teaching already, who try and put spells on the learners with charm and only curse themselves, caught in the taut cobweb of old. In any case, we're sucking up the Roman master academies in contrast to scholars, in fear of defying them, else wanting flattery, approval, and a piece of paper to frame, to put on your wall. So there are few scholars, and I don't purport to be one, but most of these scholars probably will not have needed formal education, or a piece of paper for that matter. And that I can relate to. The tendency for teachers having to feel they need to explain away a piece of language trumped by an academic setting, take a prescriptive grammar approach by calling have anything other than the above said. It's not even a light verb or delexical one, since it carries semantic content. Consider, having a new gadget didn't help matters much. I can already hear some of you saying having is a gerund. It is not the gerundium. It's what we may more accurately call nominalization. But let's not be splitting hairs. Once again, drop the labeling. For one, it doesn't help learners, and two, it's linguistically inaccurate. Look at the semantics of have plus ing. Have expresses a status, contrary to be, which expresses a state, not to be confused with state verbs. Useless labeling, since whether you bought or owned a gadget is not the point, but the consequence, the predicament, objection, opinion, etc. That is what is important. So now consider she's having another child. It's a way of saying that the mother will be having to bear the labor pains of yet another child, weighed not against, say, her possessing an heir, but possibly a twin, though we don't have enough context, of course, to know for sure. In any event, it's wrong to label it present and doubly wrong to call it the present continuous or progressive, though the typical explanation is to brush it off and say it's an action happening around now or in the near arranged future. BS, since it dismisses the fact that the so-called present continuous may just as much express intermittency, exception to a routine, possession, there's that word again, futurity and whatnot. It's another excuse to explain away the intrinsics, for instance, semantics of each morpheme, be, have, and ing. In all cases, these serve distinct functions and may be combined or isolated as we see fit. Furthermore, the premise that have is a state or stative verb is misleading or meaningless, given ing may be affixed on practically all so-called state verbs: want, need, and even understand. With the exception of own, again, let's face it, what do we truly own? And I made a note here as well that own, originally an adjective, came from o, which is also where ought comes from. Just as taught, T-A-U-T, gave rise to teach, and then taught with a G-H. There's no such thing as to own anything or anyone, and teach is only a very fantastical word. My being considered a teacher does not qualify me as a sir, nor am I teaching here, actually. What I can say is, can the rules and terminology, sir, for they are a cancer to true learning. Don't mistake me, I am not against pragmatism, conventions, standards, especially where spelling is concerned, and I do leave a little leeway for stylistic choice of punctuation, unlike many academies. Here's a final illustration, one closer to heart to what I wish to express herein. I'm having enough of this nonsense. Granted, there's no need for be plus verb plus ing in the above sample, as we wouldn't need the focus to be on have in most contexts, except perhaps in this discourse, inasmuch as enough in itself intensifies having sufficient sense. Sure, perhaps I can legitimize that formulation only in the particular context of this discourse. Is it legitimate? Okay, so sure, the last sentences above are improbable as they're conjured. A real person, parent, mother, etc., would not likely ever need word something in such a way. In fact, it'll likely have already distanced the receiver from an authentic discourse, as is this one, of course. But I include it to illustrate the trap all grammarians, traditional teachers, and lexicographers, editors, etc., fall into when having to prove, teach, argue, so as to assert convention, authority, ego, etc. So I think we can agree that it would be enough to say, I've had just about enough. And who is to bicker over what is correct or incorrect and what is possible or impossible? Rules are the very things that will cause speakers to break them, as I've done here. And break them we will. As if language were based on rules. Okay, finally, I posit that there are at least 3 learner types. I'm not talking about visual, audio, and spatial, and kinetic, and I don't know what. But I'm talking about 3 specific kinds of learners. Those who actually pick up the phonetic and rhythmic music of English, in this case, ing, and also have, in the sense that you might use, haven't got something, and got would be the rhythmic indicator. These learners will advance through exposure and practice, And two, second learner, those whose tendency is to question and intellectualize, who get stunted or don't progress beyond the level of mediocrity, or then switch to another language altogether, which is actually not all that bad an idea. I think Chinese is just as important these days. And three, those learners who blindly follow. The first are intuitive, the second are generally bright, but benefit only if they can wean off the tendency to become biased and overly intellectual. And the third are doomed unless they remain inquisitive and question the mainstream. Though I generally try to avoid using the epicene they in most contexts, as it comes across as being exclusive, stereotyping, if not condescending or elitist, purist, I do refer to learners here with they for the purpose of my wanting to express the hypothetical. See my answer on backshifting. And you'll find my ebook as well in Buy Me a Coffee under Insider English, and I'll post the links below. Thanks for joining.